Hello, everyone. Happy Friday. Welcome to this event. I'm just trying to get over to my events and get this started. But today, I am speaking to you about fighting for causes, in particular, the education cause. And the reason I decided to do this way is that I'm going to start talking about this more and more. And I thought I would bring it up first to my community and get your feedback on it, and then try to hone the message for more public consumption. But I like to think of you guys as sort of my most sophisticated audience members, people who come from a pretty broad range of perspectives and also are fairly thoughtful. I don't think people would be committing to being a member of this community without giving a lot of thought to how they want to improve education, the actions they actually want to take as individuals, and the actions they want to take as consumers of uh, the efforts to improve education. Let's put it that way. So the issue of advocacy versus activism, and I've kind of coined that myself, is important because I think it hinders our ability to be effective at improving anything really, anything, any cause that you have. Excuse my mess, by the way, I've been sewing for Christmas. Um, is going to be hindered if you fight it the wrong way. If you become an activist rather than an advocate. And the difference in my mind is an activist is somebody who has a cause and they go out and they promote their cause or they yell about their cause, but it has a tendency to be based on what you might call common enemy strategy. It involves a lot of negative messaging, and it involves looking for the most negative in the people who are, you know, wrecking things or not fixing things the way you want them to fix it. And not so much focusing on the positive of what it is you want. And when it comes to education and fighting, let's say, the woke ideas, I think we have to be very careful we don't become woke ourselves. And I've said before on this channel that woke to me is sort of a shorthand for a collectivist worldview, an us versus them worldview, a worldview that breaks everything into systems of power and privilege, where people are oppressed, somebody's a victim, somebody's an oppressor, and things are wrong because somebody wants them to be wrong solely to oppress you. And this is tough because I have said, and I actually believe that a lot of things going on in education are going on because there are people who have power who want to maintain their power and want to have power over other people. I do believe that. That said, I don't think they are half as effective in their efforts to achieve that as we are in accidentally letting them achieve it. So if I had to, weigh like who's got, who's more, for lack of a better term, to blame for their success in this area, I think it would be a combination of people who either refuse to believe that there's bad enough people out there that would want to have power over them, so they just ignore it or they ostrich about it, or in fighting those people, they become those people. And so now you have a larger group of people who are jockeying for power, and the majority of people are letting them, kind of duke out who's going to win in the end. And then you wonder why the problem never got solved. So, the reason I think that this ends up happening, where people go from being advocates for what they want instead of the thing they've got and turn into activists, is that we do have to call out the negative. Otherwise, how are you going to get people aware that something is wrong? But the problem comes in when people stay there, when that's the only place you hang out, when that becomes that fighting the cause becomes your reason for existing, when it becomes you become so fight or flight, enemy, I've got to fight the enemy oriented, that you forget what it was you wanted in the first place, or you begin to think that all you want is to get rid of the enemy, or that in and of itself is a good, when it's not. It's not enough to banish evil, for example. you have to first understand how it got into power in the first place so you can prevent it from happening again. And you have to be the good. You have to be what is going to replace it. Otherwise, let's say you vanquish it. Now what? What's there? It's a vacuum. So, one of the things that we talk about when complaining about woke ideas is they don't have any ideas. They only have things they don't like. They tear things down, they destroy, they are decolonizing, deconstructing, everything. And what I've started to see in people who say they want to improve education, anti woke, if you will, um, is I'm starting to see people become like that as well, become activists for anti wokeness, if that's a thing, rather than advocates for better education. And it might sound like, well, Deb, are you trying to toot your own horn here because that's what you call yourself, whatever, as an advocate, whatever. And I'm like, okay, maybe a little, but I would put it at more like I'm communicating to you my aspiration. I'm a human being, so I'm as vulnerable to falling prey to this tendency. I think it's a very human tendency, as anybody. And when I catch myself doing it, I try to call it out. I try to, in myself, I try to be self aware and say, wait a minute, what are you doing? Like, maybe you should check that this is really true. And you should call out what is true and what's false and so forth. So, for example, if you watch the Dissident Dispatch this past Monday, where I tore apart the ethnic studies curriculum, and I certainly didn't have anything nice to say about it, but I did take pains to show where there were kernels of truth, because there are. And we, as advocates for better education, for good education, and child protection and things like that, and parental rights, we have to be careful that we don't say everything they say and do is a lie, because that's a lie. That's not true. There's truth wrapped in lots of lies, or framed in a way that creates a lie in terms of a worldview or perception. And it's a lie that serves the activism of the people who are telling it. So it's propaganda, but that doesn't make every single thing they say not true. Kind of like, let's just take, for example, step outside of education, and let's just take, for example, the immigration debate. It's a big one, right? Um, both sides, if there are two sides, both sides have points. They say things that are true. And the problem is activists who embrace the common enemy approach to things, and common enemy, common humanity comes from I don't know where it originally comes from, but I got it from Coddling of the American Mind by Jonathan Haidt and Greg Lukianoff. So I highly recommend that book. It's very interesting. But the common humanitarian approach might be to say, look, yes, there are some criminals coming over and they do terrible things, and we need to work on that. But yes, there are also some very, very good people who are trying to escape horrible conditions that if we were, in the same situation, we would want to be able to escape and go to America or go somewhere and be welcomed or allowed in, and not arbitrarily restricted because we're from a certain geographical area. So we can look at those two things and we can say they're both true, both factually correct. And how are we going to resolve an issue where we have millions of people coming to the border and saying, we want to come into the United States? How do we make sure that we don't reject that this truth exists, to address this one, and then, or fail to address this because we're so busy focusing on that? And politically, what's happened is you get activists who simply reject a truth or claim it's a conspiracy theory, that's exaggerated, it's a lie, it's propaganda, and only focus on the thing that makes them look good, and it makes them look good, virtuous. When I say look good, not look, like, oh, you're so fantastic, but look like this is the side you want to be on. That polarity is activism. That's what activists tend to do. That's what tribalists tend to do. That's what is happening as well in education. Only I think actually um it's even worse in education, because education shouldn't be a political issue at all. Protecting the border, we could argue, is and always will be and probably should be a political issue, because it's the one, you know truly legitimate form of government is to protect its citizens and to protect its sovereignty, to protect the sovereignty of the country. Otherwise, why do you have a country? Why do you have borders at all, right? So you can say, well, it's kind of a legitimate purpose of the government is to hash this out within government. But it's not a legitimate purpose or function of government to educate all the children in the country. So we're already starting from something that's illegitimate to begin with, in my opinion, and I think in a lot of people's opinions. And now we're here. And so people say, well, I want better. And you've got the advocates, I believe, are the ones, they don't get a lot of clicks and likes and attention and so forth because they have to be so nuanced. You have to say, well, yes, parents have rights and parents should be educating their own kids and and so on and so forth. And this is, well, what's that going to look like? Why do I have to answer that question? Because you do. Because we've had over 100 years of it not being parents. So you have to answer that question. Oh, crap, homework, right? And then, like, but parents know best. Do they? What about parents who abuse their kids? Oh, crap, more homework. I have to answer that. I have to address that because I'm advocating for a parent-driven, family-driven approach for education. I have to paint you a picture of that. That's what an advocate does. It says, this is what it would look like. This is how it would function. And the law, the government is there for those times when it doesn't. When a kid is being abused, when there's evidence, when somebody, is a foster kid and has no parents, and now they have to step in and do something. Okay. But I have to first draw you a picture to replace the thing that's there. And the activist doesn't have to do that. The activist comes in and says, this is bad because reasons, or this is good because reasons. And they just have to tell you what they like about it or what's good about it. Or they can take a crap on the advocates and the other people who say it's bad, and they're done. No homework for me. I don't have to do anything except point out what's bad. And I'm finished. And I can sit there and, put a feather in my cap and say, see, I brought you the news of how bad everything is. Bow down, click like, subscribe, give me money. Or join our organization or become a member or whatever. And that's all I have to do. I have to be the resource that came and got you good and angry. And now you know that something is bad, bad, bad. Well, okay. But how does that make the people doing it any different in the end from the ones who said, we have to have public education or we have to have whatever this is, because if we don't, then the bad people over there are doing the thing, right? The common enemy idea. You become that which you claim to hate. You end up being people who say, no one should have this. Everybody should do this. Just about something different. And it starts off subtly. I don't think people go into this thinking like, I want to fight for better education. So the first thing I'm going to do is demonize everybody else who doesn't want to do what I want to do. I don't think most of the people go into it with that. I just think you get kind of sucked into it. And I think it's easy to get sucked into it because there are so many people doing that and doing it so visibly on social media where, getting attention requires you to be, look at this, sensationalistic. And so it's very easy to think that's the way to do it, or to fall back on the whole, they do it, we have to do what they do. Why is it okay for them, but not for us? It's like, well, it's actually not okay for them either. But, you're just saying that because they're getting a lot of attention that people like it or agree with it or think it's okay. And that's fallacious. That's not true. So you have to decide, what kind of person do I want? Do I want to be the kind of person who's driven by what I imagine is going on based on likes and clicks and subscriptions and prominence of somebody's name? Or do I want to go with what I just believe to be true and right and use my own values to evaluate everything? And what I'm here to tell you is that it is my position that we need more advocates and fewer activists in the education space, and that the way to be an advocate is you start in your own home. You start in your own home and always weigh everything against that, not what's going on in the outside world, not even what's going on in the schools, not even what I talk about on my channel all the time on Dissident Dispatch. It's interesting and you should definitely know about it and so forth, I think, but if only so that you can get, you know, information about how to do something differently or better for your own children, or to help those you are close to and care about do the same. If they start feeling like, well, but my relative said I'm going to be a racist if I don't put them in the public school, and they need to do they're going to miss out on ethnic studies, and then they're going to grow up like sheltered, and I don't know, and maybe I don't want to do sex ed. Maybe I should have somebody else do sex ed. And I haven't been told I'm a closed-minded bigot if I don't do this. so that you can have information to talk to them about the benefits of you doing that education or you choosing the people to do those kinds of education and how it's so much better. So you actually address the issue at hand, the person's genuine concern, which is, I don't want my child to grow up to be a sheltered bigot. Who does? Really? I mean, like, what rational person you'd have a conversation with does. I don't want my kid to miss out on XYZ, fill in the blank. So you can't say, they're going to harm your kid. They're going to do this terrible thing. They're going to abuse your kid. They're going to terrible trauma, blah, 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 blah. You can try that, but you run the risk as an activist against, which is what that is, activism, that you're going to have a high percentage of people going, you know, thinking that of you, first of all, not you should care what people think of you all by itself, but if you're actually trying to reform things and make them better, that's probably not the way to go. It's probably not the way to go. You're not going to, like, I hate to use the expression, but win hearts and minds with that approach. And if instead you say, well, okay, but I get that you don't necessarily want to talk to your children about sex. Totally get it. Not that jazzed about it myself. What if you were able to find some resources that you could handpick that could help you do it yourself? Or you were able to choose adults that you definitely trust and know the backgrounds of to help you with that, um, rather than entrusting it to a stranger. What if you could find those resources? Would that change your mind? Or something like, well, why do you assume that the ethnic studies that they're picking at the school is better than what you could pick? I mean, you're not a bigot, you're not a racist. So you could choose resources to teach your kids how to be, a tolerant, wonderful, accepting, loving person. Of course you can. You can totally do that. Let me help you. Um Rather than, it's all bad. Now you can do both. You can say, well, let's compare. If we look at 1776 Unites as an example in the Black History course that they have, we see this range of people that they're covering, including some of the ones covered in the school. They're including Benjamin Banneker, they're including Thomas Sowell, they're including Walter Williams, they're including Carol Swain, whatever. This one is only covering people of a very specific political point of view. So, wouldn't you rather have some balance in there? And you don't need to just go, that's all complete garbage. And like I said, I'm sure I sound like a hypocrite. It's like, Deb, you say it's garbage all the time. Sure I do. Like on Twitter and this and that and the other. But I try to balance it out with, this is the way. This is what you need. These are better. This is a resource. This is something good. This is what good education looks and sounds like. These are the traits you would really want to instill in your children if what you say you want is X. So there's at least a balance between the, oh my God, this is crap, and this is what it should be. I'm not saying don't ever point out the negative. I'm just saying make sure that you don't become exactly like the woke or the left or whatever label you want to put on them in terms of your, like, absolute tunnel vision around bad, 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 bad. Because that leaves people feeling sort of adrift. And the truth of the matter is that when you're already on the defense, in the sense that the thing you're trying to fix has been captured. Like, in other words, it's not an even battle. You're not both rushing towards the same goal at about the same pace and just hoping to win. Where there's somebody occupying the fort. They're in there. You're outside the walls. You're trying to breach the walls. You're trying to get in and rescue hostages, your children, from this bankrupt culture and idea and worldview or whatever, or help other people do the same. You can just fire all your weapons and all your weapons and all your weapons and all your weapons at the thing. Go ahead. That'll spend a lot of money. That'll use up all your weapons. They're going to keep going in there and hiding. They're going to be like, we're under attack. Ooh. Or you can weigh the cost benefit of fighting the fort at all, build a new fort, invite people to come over there, and then focus your energies on, just rescuing the hostages or negotiating for their release. You have to decide, what are you going to do? And I'm not sitting here saying ceasefire. I'm just saying, make sure you've got a safe haven for everybody who isn't a hostage at the same time that you're firing your weapons. at a minimum. Don't just make it about the weapons. It can't just be that. And that's what I'm seeing. So another example, and this came up today. Actually, there are two examples that made me realize I had to talk about this. And they might seem kind of far afield, but I think they are in the same category. The first one is a report out of Boston that the mayor of Boston inappropriately used resources, public resources, and got in an accident. And wasn't this a terrible thing that this mayor did? And she should be removed from office because of this horrible thing that she did with driving and getting into an accident. And I ended up in an argument with somebody. So I'm going to go ahead and show you what happened. And to me, this example illustrates what I mean by advocacy versus activism. I personally think that the person that I commented to is an activist, not an advocate, and I think most of the people in the comments are the same. So this is Libs of TikTok, which I've shared plenty of their stuff, but I do so after having checked that what you're sharing is actually accurate. And of late, I'm starting to feel like she's gotten sucked into being an activist first and a reformer not at all. And I don't mean to slam her. I'm just saying I don't like this, and I don't want to get stuck in this feedback loop. Report: the mayor of Boston is abusing her position. Here's footage of the mayor of Boston, Mayor Wu, getting into a car accident a few months ago. She was driving in a police cruiser. So what do you first think? You think she's driving it, which ran a red light. She claimed she was on her way to an event, but it was not on her calendar for that morning. It's against the law to use a police car with sirens and lights if it's not an emergency or is not for public service. She hit a car carrying a mom and her baby who both went to the hospital. The mom is a Lyft driver and this is her sole income. She was out of work for weeks. So the mom and the baby, she hit a car carrying a mom and a baby, and they both went to the hospital. Now, if you look at this footage, because you don't really see, you can kind of see like a blinking light, but you don't, it's an unmarked car. Look, they're two black cars. So when I first watched this video, I thought the car that kept going was the mayor's car, not the car up front. That was harder to tell. It looked like that car that went past the white car had run a red light, because these cars stopped. And this car was coming obviously to make a left around the corner on the street. So that's what I thought. And then I said, wait a minute, something's not right about this. Like, which car was which, whatever. So I clicked over to the actual story, which is, I don't know why this is not showing up. Okay, which is here. Very scared mother of infant involved in crash with boss mayor wants to change procedures. So then we see about Rosemary, et cetera. And I watched the video of the mom, and you can go watch it too. And she goes through and she says, I couldn't see the car before the crash. It turns out the one who kept going was the mom. The other cars stopped. The other cars saw the siren, saw the whatever, and they stopped. So it's hard to tell who ran the red light. And she says, you couldn't see it. And then she says the car should have stopped and given enough time for the traffic to completely stop before it went through the red lights. Well, that's kind of defeats the purpose of having this. I'm not justifying the mayor using a police car in this fashion. So, and I know, but it says she never heard the siren. She never, any of that. She just kept going. But she definitely said, she continues to go and say that her son was in the car seat. That she took him to the hospital as a precaution. They went to the hospital as a precaution. They chose to go. She was okay. She was doing fine. She's a Lyft driver, so her car being messed up is a problem. She wants the city to take, a hard look at whether the cars, officials driving the cars, she was scared. But she says she credits Mayor Wu for spending time comforting her and apologizing and so forth. And you can safely assume that the city's probably going to do something. Now, full disclosure, I don't particularly like Mayor Wu. I'm no fan of Mayor Wu for a lot of reasons. But my comment was, I said, look, I despise the woman, but the description in the above post doesn't match what happened at all. The mayor wasn't driving, and she gave the impression the mayor was driving the car. The woman who was hit doesn't blame the mayor. She says she's a wonderful person. So in the description, it's like, blah, blah, blah. She hit a mom carrying a mom, and the mom's Lyft driver is her sole income. She was out of work for weeks. Both went to the hospital. You get the impression from the post that the mom's like, bereft. Mom doesn't blame the mayor at all. She blames the city. The police detail drove that way. Whoever the driver was, he made that decision. I don't think, I mean, it may be that the mayor said, drive with your siren on, or the guy driving might have said, we're late getting to where we're going. This is what I'm going to do. Any reason. And nowhere in the news report does it say anything about an appointment not being on our calendar. It doesn't say anything about that, about where she was going or why or whatever. But it's not that uncommon, actually, for politicians to ride in unmarked cars with the lights on just to get through traffic faster. And I'm not saying it's right for them to do. I'm just saying that if there's a policy and that needs to be reviewed, that's on the police. That's on the police. Because even the mayor said, I defer to them that, that I'll look into it, but I didn't, she didn't ask them to do that. The rest of the traffic stopped. So they clearly saw it. So there could be some fault on both sides here. And there's nothing in the report about that thing. So what do I get? It doesn't matter if the woman wants to crawl up her ass and live there despite being wronged. This was misappropriation of resources and needlessly endangered or harm the public. Wouldn't be okay if the cops were running lights, blah, blah, blah. Nowhere did I say it was okay. What happened? I said I didn't say it was okay. I said the facts were misrepresented, which they were. Easier to fight not okay things when you don't lead with bullshit. And you didn't point out factual inaccuracy in that post. You misinterpreted it. Did I? How many times do we hear as advocates for better education that we're misinterpreting ethnic studies curriculum? We're misinterpreting critical race theory. We're misrepresenting what's happening. I'm not a stupid person. I read the Libs of TikTok post, and the way it was written, the way it was framed, very clearly gave the impression that the mayor was to blame, that the mayor was either driving the car or somehow gave instruction to do that, that the mayor's car ran a red light, like just ran a red light recklessly and slammed into this car, they went to the hospital. It's framed in a way that makes you believe that the mom and the kid ended up hospitalized, not making a trip to the ER just to get checked out. And there is a difference. There is a difference. You want to do a post about the mayor using a police car. First of all, also be very sure that you know the law in Boston about the use of police cruisers and whether it is or is not misappropriation of resources. These people are talking out their ass. They don't know for certain what the policy is or why the cops were driving that way. We don't know. How many times have we been wrong or wronged in reverse where it's like, that cop killed that guy. He killed Michael Brown in cold blood. He murdered it. Hands up, don't shoot. And what has happened as a consequence? If you don't want it done to you, you don't do it. But this is what happens when getting clicks and so forth. And this is so excuse her away as you elitist wannabes always do. I'm an elitist wannabe? That's news to me. Driving or not, she was in charge. The woman is scared of what powerful folks do to average folks or is a suck up to power. But I'm interpreting. Look at what was attributed to this poor woman. She's a suck up to power. You see what's happening here? This is what happens when activism takes over your brain. You stop being an advocate for truth and reality, which is what I thought we wanted in better education. Or do we just want our kids to grow up to be right-wing, jingoistic, reactionary bigots like they say we do? See, I don't. I want my kids to grow up and look at things factually and say, can I have the facts, please? Like, let me make my own decision of why the woman is okay with the mayor. Let me make my own decision about whether it was misappropriation of resources, et cetera, and so forth. Police detail or not, the driver was in the wrong. No emergency. She's in abuse of power. I have seen politicians be driven around every city I've ever lived in with flashing lights on, going through red lights many, many times. Fucking funerals go through red lights. They have a lead car out there. The police car goes out there with the flashing lights, no siren, and they stop the tribe. They go through all the red lights. When you have a police detail for a funeral, that is what they do. That's not an emergency. That person is dead. I'm pretty sure it's not an emergency to get them to the grave on time. So These are these people making statements that I guarantee you would not make if it was Trump in the car. And if we're not going to be even-handed about it, then what are we doing? We're not advocating for better. We're just pissed off that someone else is in charge and it isn't us. And this just kind of irked me. I was just like, I can't stand Michelle Wu. I cannot stand her for so many reasons. Our politics could not be more divergent. I have no use for the woman. I'm not trying to defend her. I'm not trying to defend her police detail. I'm not a big fan of police abuse of power either, but I'm a very, very big fan of truth and facts. And I know that I lose all credibility if I go out there and just make a case to the public that is clearly designed to trigger outrage and nothing more. Nothing more. She claimed this, she claimed that. Well, I'm sorry. If you are not an investigative reporter on the ground, having checked out all the details, and you now know for certain that she lied, and you can't come and give it to us. I read the police report, which anyone can do. It doesn't say half the shit intimated in that post. But I'm an elitist wannabe. So that's one of the examples. Another example is, and it's not as big a deal as this, but it still bothered me kind of a lot. And that was that, I went to the movies last night and saw Wonka. And it was opening night, and my youngest was so excited because she's a big Timothy Chalamet fan, as a lot of young girls are. And we're all in this house Roald Dahl fanatics, and we all love the Charlie and the Chocolate Factory storyline, and have seen all of the Wonka movies, et cetera, and so forth. And yes, we all love Gene Wilder desperately, think he was marvelous, the best, et cetera. And in this household, we also didn't really care for the Johnny Depp one, but went to see it anyway. Okay. We came out of that theater smiling ear to ear. There was an entire scene in that movie where I actually physically couldn't stop smiling. Now, maybe that's me, but you guys know me. I'm very cynical. And I still was sitting there just big cheese eating grin on my face the whole time, like full of wonder, just like, this is amazing. Like, I can't even believe I can imagine being a person walking into this environment, like what it would be like. It was just beautiful. And the whole time too, I was thinking, this is so great. This is so great. Somebody in Hollywood made a movie that it not only entertains and is beautiful and is uplifting and champions the ingenuity and spirit and hope of an individual, not a group, not an identity, but just everything that we say that we're for, everything we say we care about, everything we say we want to see more of in our entertainment, in our books, in our schools, and everything that surrounds our children. The messaging of just, persevere, keep your chin up, work together with other people towards a shared goal for good reasons, for noble and honorable reasons. Don't let mean people bring you down. Don't let other people set the agenda of your life. All of these things. And I'm so happy and joyful to come and share this with people, because I feel like, hey guys, this is something you could take your kids to during this holiday break or whatever, and you can actually expose them to something good to help combat the bad. And what do I get? I'm not going to see another retread from Hollywood and another woke movie. Now, last night was opening night. They didn't see it. And they could have seen it, but they didn't. These weren't people who'd seen it. These weren't people who'd even seen the trailer. These are people who heard Hollywood movie in the theater and then Wonka. And immediately were like shitting all over it. I don't know. It's another Hollywood. It's not even a remake. It's new. It's an origin story. They didn't even know that, but they had all these negative things to say. And I think it really came to a head when I was getting messages from people, and I get direct messages, like an annoying amount. Message from people. I'm surprised at you. Why you would advocate for us to take our children to a Hollywood movie? That is just so woke of you. Blah, blah, blah. We're boycotting Hollywood. And I'm like, all right, guys, if you want better, you got to be looking for better. And when better shows up, you got to praise it, finance it, show up, buy it. That's what the fucking market is. That's why we call for a free market, so that we can have a choice and we can buy the thing that is good and not buy the thing that is bad. It's not so we can all go, I'm not doing it anymore because me. And 90% of the time, it's coming from people who aren't doing anything to build alternatives, even in their own home. They're not doing anything to make anything better. They don't even have an articulation of what better is. They are no different, in my opinion, than the most leftist organizer or bitchy, moany, whiny cry person of this and life doesn't work out for me. Okay, complain some more. Enjoy that. Enjoy your Christmas with that as your mindset. I'm telling you, there's something here that can, that is good. You can give it a try. You might disagree with me. You might go and say, it's all right. Okay, but it's not woke. Like I spend my days looking at woke. It's not woke. The most woke thing you say is like that you had some people in there that were objectively poor who were complaining about how some people who are objectively greedy were treating them because they were poor. And they did explicitly say that too, that they were treating them that way for that reason, to keep them poor. These individuals, not everyone, just these few individuals. So, I mean, I guess if you think that no one should ever, ever complain about the way rich people behave, even when the rich people in question are complete assholes and greedy and controlling, which, is a whole lot like Klaus Schwab. So it's like, it's okay to complain about these rich people and sound like, rich, us versus them, whatever, when it's the WEF. But if you go to a movie and it's like, it's like, I promise you, if you were in their situation, you'd be pissed off too. It's just a little microcosm of, two or three rich people and a few poor people, not on a global scale. But it's the same concept of greed of that kind. Exploitative greed is bad. Yeah, it is. And it does happen. And if we've gotten to the point of, where we can't defend capitalism and we can't defend free markets and we can't defend liberty without allowing actually bad people to get away with shit just because we don't want to say mean things about rich people, like then now we've become them. We've become our own worst enemy where we can't really fight for anything because we are not as well funded, not as well organized, not we have homework to do. We can't just do what they do in reverse, or all you're going to get. This is what happened in Germany, Weimar Germany, is you have the fascists and the socialists duking it out, and the fascists won that time. Other times, the socialists win. I don't want either of these sides to win. I don't want to be on a side. I just want to defend reality and truth and liberty. And I don't care if half of the town disagrees with me and raises their kids differently than I do, as long as I'm not forced to pay for it, forced to have my kids interact with them, forced for me to be under their thumb. I'd rather they had better ideas, but I don't want to live in a country where they're not allowed to be wrong. They're not allowed to make mistakes of the kind that I wouldn't make. That makes you no different than the people that you say are screwing things up. And that's what I'm seeing. And so I know it's hard. I know it's really easy. Like I said, I do this every single day. It is so easy to get caught up in the like, this sucks, that sucks, the other sucks. And they're trying to control us. They're trying to control us. They're trying to hurt our kids. They're trying to hurt our kids because they are. That is true. That is very true. But I also know that if I don't explain to people how children actually learn, what a good school would be like, what the benefits of homeschooling are, what a good curriculum looks like, what a good teacher looks like, what you can do in your own home to combat the stuff you can't change, the whole serenity prayer type of stuff. If I don't offer that up, people will shut down. They'll become like that, where everybody's your enemy, and that's not good. Because that's going to get passed to their kids. That's going to get passed to their kids too. They'll crush their relationship with their children because their children are, now it's like civil war between mom and the school. Can't have that. You got to sell your ideas. But people don't want to do it. They want an easy answer. It's, lazy. This is all good. That is all bad. They want their final Jeopardy answers to every problem. It doesn't work like that. So, we have to be careful. And the final thing I'll say on this is that recently, and I'm not going to name names, but just to let you guys know that, if you start to notice that there are people I'm not interacting with anymore, or, like, I wonder why Dad doesn't have that person back on the show, whatever. Or I never mention them or mention their work. There are some people that I have worked with that I used to, laud as being like almost heroic in their efforts that I have since blocked and do not want to work with and do not want to be associated with. There's two in particular. And the reason I've done it is they made a conscious decision, in my opinion. Well, not in my opinion, one told me explicitly they made a conscious decision to become activists, to go on just on just purity, one towards the purity testing side of activism, and one towards the I don't care what heinous bottom dweller I have to associate with, as long as they're fighting for the same cause as me. And both of those extremes, in my opinion, make you an activist, not an advocate. So let's take the one who says, I'm going to associate with bottom dwellers, who on any other day and any other reason, I would never talk to them because they treat people like garbage. I disassociated from that person because I felt like it was completely unethical. And someday I'll sit down and write an article about the whole ethics of fighting for this stuff. But if you are observing somebody in this education reform space treating other people, regardless if they're in the space or they're on the enemy side, treating them personally, they're like ad hominem stuff, more than just a casual insult, like, Gavin Newsom is like a Bond villain. Okay, that's fine. But when like a concerted trolling attack or, let's go and, like go to their house, let's do the, I mean, no, you know, they're not worth it, first of all, but especially people ostensibly in the same space as you because they have a different opinion or they're going about it a little, like there's people who are activists. Like I would never say a negative word about Libs of TikTok. I will tell you what I disagree with about what she did here, but I'm not going to go publicly and go, oh, Chaya, what did you do? You're an asshole. Blah, 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 blah. Like, what? Why would I do that? I don't like this. So I'm going to go and put out what I think is, my opinion, why I think it's a problem. This isn't accurate, etc. Took the heat for it. And that's the end of it. I'm not going to beat a dead horse, but I would not go after her because that doesn't do anybody any good. The truth will out. I'm just going to go over here and advocate for the truth. I'm going to go over here and advocate for reality until I can't talk anymore. Right. But I see people who would do that or just done it to me where they disagree with some angle that I've taken or something that I'm saying. And it's open season on Deb. It's open season on Paul Rossi. It's open season on James Lindsay, whatever. And here's how they're wrong. And I'm going to rip them to shreds. They're an idiot. Da, 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 da. And it's like, aren't we kind of trying to achieve the same end goal here? Why are you doing this? You see it with Trump supporters, where if you don't support Trump and you support DeSantis, well, you're a traitor, you're this, you're that, you're all bad things, you're a loser, you're gonna blah 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 blah. It's not just all right, well, but let's let the better man win because we're all both trying to defeat Joe Biden. No, it's tribalism all day long. I see zero difference between the people who are acting like you are the scum on the bottom of their shoe if you don't like Donald Trump and the people who acted that way about Bernie or Hillary or anybody else on the left. No difference. None. It's the same activist mindset of us versus them, common enemy, common enemy, common enemy. And I'm like, you got the wrong common enemy if you are fighting your fellow conservatives. And I've seen some people in this education space do that to each other. And in another case, there was the purity testing. So we have one where it's like, I'll associate with people who treat other people like absolute garbage, smear them, slander them, libel them, etc., because they're getting the word out. They're getting a lot of clicks and likes. So they're getting a lot of attention on this important issue. Yeah, that doesn't follow its good attention. It could be like, look at those crazy lunatics attacking each other. They're eating their own. Yes, everybody stops to watch a car wreck. It doesn't improve traffic safety. Now, on the other side, you've got the purity testing people. And the purity testing people are the ones who want to define for you, and they exist on the left. They want to define for you what it is to be a good person, fighting for better education or whatever. And anybody who isn't doing it that way is bad. We don't need them. So it doesn't matter that that person is saying all the same things about the issue, wants the same outcomes you want. Their personal life is different than you would live yours. They are, do things you don't agree with, or, like they're an atheist and you're a Christian, or they are, well, I'll give you the example is that the person who got attacked is Buck Angel. Now, you guys know I'm a little biased. I had Buck on my channel. I consider Buck a friend. Buck has never denied having a mental illness. Buck has never said, I'm a perfectly healthy person. No. Buck has never denied being female. Buck has never said, you must use my pronouns. Like, none of these things ever happened. All that Buck did was go and make a tweet saying, if you come up to me in my face and you insist on saying, she and me, and like, that kind of person that feels like they've got to make a point of using the biological pronouns just to be mean, like just to be like, you're a liar, whatever, then you actually are anti-trans. Like, you actually are a person who isn't even comfortable letting adults live their lives in whatever way they want, that, you might not like it, but that's how they're living their lives. You're not just about protecting children now. That's all that Buck said. And this other individual was nasty, just mean. And I was so taken aback because I was like, I don't want to be associated with that. I do not want to be that. They became, with through purity testing, unlike the other person is, I'm going to associate with the bottom dweller because, whatever. And that's really bottom dweller behavior. Somebody who treats other people, lies about people, et cetera, just to get an upper hand and hurt their work, or, whatever. I'm going to associate with that person because they get a lot of attention. And then this one saying, I'm not associating with that person because that person doesn't live life the way I do. And I'm seeing that too. No grace whatsoever. No, there's an option there. It's called don't associate. If you want to be free to associate with the people you want to associate with, and you don't want the woke people saying, ooh, you associate with that person that makes you bad, then don't do it to other people. Even the person I blocked because they were hanging out with a bottom dweller who was abusing me and a few of my friends, I didn't go publicly and make noise about it. I didn't say to other people, like, if you continue to associate with this guy, then I just was like, well, I can't work with you anymore because you're not willing to look at what's true and what's right. And you're okay with this person abusing me. And I can't work with you then. It's like, I can't do it. So, and I was literally told to my face, well, that person has more followers than you. So, and they made their choice. I don't think I did anything weird or wrong, but again, I didn't go out and publicly make a big stink about it. This individual is trying to get everybody else to reject Buck. Kick Buck out of the fighting for kids thing. Say, we don't need you. We don't want you. Well, who the fuck are you to say we? Nobody has that. That is what people on the left do. That's what activists do. That's not what advocates do. It's literally the difference between being a juvenile, emotionally immature, narcissist who wants the cause to be the cause because the cause is their life, versus someone who says, I can't wait till I can quit this. I'd be so excited to just go back to, like, know anything else, doing whatever else, sewing all day, or teaching, or, something other than talking about the problems in education. I would love to be able to look forward to my grandchildren having, just all kinds of options for wonderful private education at an affordable price. Because while I love homeschooling, I genuinely don't think it's for everyone. There are going to be people who would do better, and kids who would do better to be in some kind of I don't want to call it school, but, shared learning space with other children. There are kids who benefit from that. And it's a shame that people feel like they have to choose between the two extremes. So I look forward to that day when I can quit. I don't want to be known as, Deb Philman, education reform activist. I don't want that. No, nope. So to me, that's the difference. I'm trying every day to think of things like, how can I persuade parents that this other thing is better? How do I show them the good side of this? How do I juxtapose what's being done and, show how it's wrong, but next to like what the good one looks like that they've never seen? They don't know what it looks like. I keep looking for different ways to like show them this is a school that operates this way. Let's hear from, let's hear from Carrie McDonald. Let's hear from, Rebel Educator. Let's hear from Miss Snuffy, Catherine Burbles saying. Let's talk to people who are good teachers about how they do it. I would give anything to have Lisa Van Dam on my show. She won't come because she doesn't see herself even as an advocate in this outward sense. She runs a school and she's doing it. She's living it. Doesn't need to talk about it. She writes articles, which I highly recommend to your reading at the Objective Standard. I am going to be sharing them in the links section because I think she's a great example of someone who is an advocate, but she's not like a public facing one. She's like, come and find it. It's here. I'll tell you. But she's busy actually doing things. She's making education better, many children at a time through her school. So I guess it's just been disheartening for me to see people, whether people go see Wonka or they don't go see Wonka, it's really no skin off my nose. I just feel sad that we've gotten to a point where people's first knee-jerk reaction on social media, or even I told my brother, I wrote to my brother, I said, hey, you've got to go see Wonka. And he's like, wah, wah, woke, wah, wah, wah. And I'm like, but it's not. Same thing about Little Mermaid. Everybody was so down on that she's black. And I'm like, but you're not racist. Okay. But it's a Danish fairy tale and she's not supposed to be black. I'm like, okay, they sort of rewrote it for this purpose, but she has a beautiful voice and it is a musical and they kept the red hair. It's just an enjoyable movie. I mean, we can talk about the switching of races all day long, but she's not a real person. She's an imaginary fairy tale person. So I don't know that it's really that big a deal. The Snow White thing was a bigger deal because she was obnoxious. The actress was obnoxious. Also, Snow White is supposed to be more beautiful than the Evil Queen, and the person they cast wasn't. And Snow White has a literal physical description of being skin as white as snow. So whereas Little Mermaid, we assume that because it was a Danish fairy tale and takes place outside of Copenhagen, but it doesn't have to. There are fairy tales retold all the time from different perspectives. That is not something new. So I went to see Little Mermaid and I enjoyed it. That was great. It was just fun at the movie theater. But Wonka's on a level above that where it just like my daughter was in tears. I was almost in tears because I just felt like it restored my faith in humanity. I thought of all the hundreds and hundreds of thousands of people who had to have been involved in making that movie. The people who had to fund it, the people who acted in it and had to play those roles and play them straight, all of it. And all I could think was, this was just art. This was just art and entertainment. And it was just amazing and uplifting. And it was food for the soul. And to see people knee jerk say, I'm not going to see it because Hollywood was really sad. That's not how we actually reform anything. That's just activism in reverse. That is, if you think about it, why the situation in the Middle East is so entrenched. You've got 75 years of calcification on people on one side in particular, anyway, who are just like, no, I'm not having anything to do with those people because they're those people. We can't become that. And then we have nothing good to pass to our children. What is it that we're advocating for? We win. Yeah, I don't want to be part of that. I don't want to be my own worst enemy. So that's what I had to say about that. And I hope it was clear. It sounds pretty basic when you say it out loud, like, don't be a jerk. Don't close your mind. Don't look at everything as bad just because a lot of things are bad. It seems pretty obvious. And yet, apparently it's not. Apparently there are people out there thinking I'm an elitist wannabe. I'm one person singular, two people. But that kind of thing happens to me every single solitary day. And it has happened within this education reform movement. I've had so many people basically tell me that I'm persona. I'm persona non grata because I'll associate with Buck Angel and Sarah Higdon and Mars Fernandez because they're trans. All of them agree that the schools need to stop doing what they're doing and that we should not be medicalizing these problems with the children. We shouldn't even be talking to them about it, except to maybe refer them out to, a therapist if they're bringing it up. That's it. Every single one of them agrees on that score. But because they're trans, I'm told that I should not be associating with them because that somehow is I'm a traitor. There you have it. Activism versus advocacy. So thank you for watching and happy Friday. I'll be back on Monday. I'm going over on the Dissident Dispatch show. I will be going over the CDC's new booklet, new resource for putting mental health services in the school. It's so nice. Just dropped this week. CDC. Yeah. Alrighty then. Have a great weekend, you guys.